And on today's show, retirement planning for Joe Lunchbucket, part 3 of this week's series on marketing to Middle America, with top of the table and Forum 400 producer Jim Silbernagel. Hi everyone, I'm Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and contributing author to Backroom Technician in Innsmouth. Let's get down to business. Well, welcome to day 3, Jim.
Hey, glad to be back.
We're with Jim Silbernagel. Sorry about that, Jim.
That's all right.
And Jim, I'm talking about your huge production, Forum 400, top of the table, lifetime member of MDRT, and you live in a little town of 4,000 in Wisconsin.
Actually, that's where my office is. I live in a town of 1,800.
18, so it even gets, as you go outside your house, it's even smaller.
The major metropolitan area of where we work.
Now, we're talking about your practice because you have huge production in Middle America. And is retirement modeling now, is this a big piece of your practice?
Yeah, it's always been huge. It's a matter of making the most of what people have and making every dollar count. And being in the small market, it's more important than anywhere else.
Mm-hmm. When you talk about it, I'm thinking of qualified plans, non-qualified plans, talking about Social Security, making an integrated plan for people who really don't have serious money. And when you talk about making an account, it really does matter, doesn't it, for Middle America. And so we have to look at tax issues. We have to look at the guaranteed, what's going to pay our regular bills from now till when we die. And when we die, we're in the largest revolution of human longevity we've ever seen in the modern world. And I'm kind of now thinking, is this money going to last?
Yeah.
How do you attack the middle market when you have maybe limited assets?
Well, it's making every dollar count. And what I call the Bible of financial planning is understanding the client's cash flow and helping them understand it. You know, it's the one thing that clients, when you give it to them, you know, they're like, you know, keep this away from me. I don't want a budget. I've never lived on a budget. But it's a detailed cash flow analysis that we go through. And I make the clients fill it out. And before we even meet, you know, and then we come in and then we go through each of the aspects. And you know, I've done it enough times, I kind of know what I'm looking for. But if something looks out of whack, challenging them on it, and making sure we come up with a realistic cash flow. Then once they do that, I give it back to them and I say, now I want you to picture your ideal retirement. You know, what do you aspire to have in retirement? Is it retiring at 55? Is it retiring at 70? Is it working part-time? How do you define that? You know, I think too many advisors think retirement is they get the gold watch and, you know, sit on a beach. But every client is different, and you got to make sure that they're telling you what their vision is and making sure that they come with a realistic expectation of what they want. And now we got to bridge the gap and see if it's realistic. And the thing that I'm always emphasizing to clients is it's all about priorities. Is retiring at 55 a priority, or is retiring comfortably a priority? Is traveling a priority? Is living for today a priority? Because it's all a matter of priorities. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It's getting your priorities in alignment.
Do you see in your interviews with clients that they do not have a firm grasp on the timelines that they're talking about?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's probably the biggest thing we help. And, you know, one of the comments, and I'm sure most of you out there get the same thing, wish I would have met you 20 years ago. Wish we would have started sooner. You know, but nobody's taken the time to go thoroughly through that. And I think as advisors, that's the differentiator. So many advisors out there are transactional. They don't take the time. And what's amazing to me is, you know, we're about 70 miles from Milwaukee. So I get the radio stations with the producers. And a while back, we used to be on a polka station as
Wow.
for a radio show. But I listen to these guys and the ads, and it's, well, if you have $500,000 or more, come to see me. Well, we found we can be very productive in the smaller market by taking time to understand those details.
And when you think about it, you're stretching 500,000 or less.
Yes.
And making it work much harder than some other advisor who really doesn't want to even talk to you unless you can cross his $500,000 threshold.
That's right.
Talk a little bit about, you know, I'm trying to estimate my cash flow in retirement. Now, you know, you're trying to give a good idea what's it going to be like. You know, I'm sitting there looking at all the options. There's 81 iterations of the Social Security option alone. I mean, that's a mind blower. So I'm looking at that. I'm thinking, man, should I wait till I'm 70, get the full Social Security? Should I just wait till I'm 70, get my RMDs? Do people talk that way, or they don't even know the rules of engagement?
You know, I get those questions, and I always tell them, it depends. It really depends what you're doing because, until you reach, most people don't even have a clue what that full retirement age is. They think it's some magical age. The only thing magical about it is at the full retirement age is when you can work full time and not have a reduction in your Social Security.
Right.
So it's got everybody a little bit confused. But understanding those rules and how to maximize a client's Social Security is huge. And one thing that I do a lot with my clients is what I call Social Security Max. You have one spouse dies or losing a check, and if that check is 30 or 40% of their needed income, life insurance is a great deal. Now with linked benefits, we can kill two birds with one stone. Maybe put some long-term care because if they die too soon, we're losing the Social Security checks. If they're 95, we're not so much worried about the future Social Security checks, but long-term care is becoming a bigger issue. So those are the types of things we look at.
Well, when we come back from the break, I want to continue going right down this line of some of the things that you address in retirement. And again, we're talking about people who maybe have just $500,000 or less, and that's all they have. We'll be right back from the break.
Back in the day, life insurance professionals were called field underwriters. Then, carriers trained their field force in the basics of life insurance underwriting. Today, the insurance industry doesn't educate the agent population as they once did. But now you can have the Informed Risk Guide at your fingertips so you can illustrate a reasonable rate class for your life insurance prospects. Just request your copy of the Informed Risk Guide at downtobusiness.ashbrokerage.com. It's free from Ash Brokerage, the practice enhancement company.
Well, welcome back to our second segment. Jim, I want to get right on this. We talk about human longevity. Everybody's into the SPIA, DIA, GLWB, lifetime income you can't outlive. Do you see in your practice with Middle America that this is a huge attraction to these people?
Oh, absolutely. I was at a conference recently, and early in my career, I used to talk about people living their dreams. Well, people's dreams have been brought down a little bit with the last two downturns in the market. And the study that was talked about in this conference I was at, they talked about people wanting to be comfortable in retirement. So, and I see that a lot in Middle America because they've had lost jobs, they've had cuts in pay, health insurance is a huge issue, all these costs. So even just helping them see a vision that retirement is still a possibility, but it just takes a little bit of work and prioritization, and they can retire comfortably.
What would you say your average age of a person sitting for the first time in your office, and you're talking specifically about retirement? What's that average age?
You know what? It's whoever comes in my office. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about, we're talking about where they're at today and where they want to go because everything that they do is going to have an impact.
Do they know where they want to go? Is the client really awake enough to know what that is?
Usually not.
Yeah.
But that's our role is to kind of guide them and help them start thinking about that. Time, I tell all my clients, time is your biggest asset. Time is what's going to help you grow your retirement dollars. You wait till you're 70 to decide you're going to retire and say, okay, now I max out my Social Security. Is this enough? That's not the time to plan anymore.
How big a player and impact can inflation have on a plan like this?
Oh my God, it's huge. And that's something too, when you're talking to your clients, you ask them, what is the inflation rate? Our government has been suppressing the real rate forever. And
isn't it true that the CPI doesn't even include gas and groceries?
Right, and that's just what I was going to say. I mean,
why even look at it?
That's right. And you look at the things, and I tell my clients this. I said, because they'll when you ask them what the inflation rate, they'll say, well, I think it's 2% because they heard it on CNN last night. Well, it's not 2%. And I ask them, I said, what's happening with your grocery bill? What happens when you go buy gas? And I said, you look at computer technology. Yeah, that's come way down. I said, how many people in retirement do you know standing in line at the Apple stores to get the latest technology? That's not where they're spending their money. Where they're spending their money is on fuel oil. They're spending their money on travel if they're lucky. They're spending their money on groceries. These are the things that are going up, and healthcare is the biggest one. 6-8% is what I see for numbers. So, and helping them understand that. Now, you have to balance that out and say, there is hope. It's not a hopeless situation, but the longer you wait, the more hopeless it can become. So it's important to start planning now.
Now, you brought up medical insurance, and that is going up. I actually agree, 6 to 8%. I have medical insurance, which is not long-term care insurance. Two distinct issues.
Yeah.
How much does LTC play in your retirement modeling when you're putting together some kind of a plan of action for middle America?
It's huge. I mean, I talked about earlier in the week, we take a comprehensive approach. So we're looking at all these issues, and every single client we talk about it. Now, I'm not going to waste my time for someone who doesn't want to talk about it. I'm going to bring it up. I'm going to ask them, hey, have you done any planning? What is your long-term care plan if either one of you need help? And most of them will say, well, we don't have a plan. I said, well, do you want to discuss some options or just leave whatever happens, happens? Now, going back to estate planning, in our financial powers of attorney in Wisconsin, I found out from talking to other advisors, we're kind of unique. You can't even do Title 19 planning if you're incapacitated unless you have a financial power of attorney that says divestment planning is okay. So we address the issue with every client that does estate planning by at least leaving us some tools that we can maybe help safeguard some assets for a community spouse, one that doesn't need care. But the long-term care planning part of it's probably one of the most important insurances people can buy, whether it's linked benefits or traditional. But, I let people know, hey, look, if you don't want to buy it, that's fine with me, but we're going to address it. And if you decide to make that decision that that's a chance you're going to take, just keep in mind that's going to have a huge impact if one of you needs the care. And the odds are pretty good that you might.
Well, apparently, if we're going to live longer, the odds of, at the minimum, assisted living at home is going to be, that's the minimum. So I think it's almost a given now. And we have statistics out, put out by several different councils that talk about 70% of most seniors today, not the boomers, seniors today, are using some form of long-term care. And again, not Medicaid, not Medicare.
Yeah, and I see that in my practice quite a bit. And as a matter of fact, in Wisconsin, and I'm sure this might happen in other states, we have the second lowest reimbursement rate, the last time I looked at it, of all the states for Title 19. And what's happening with our nursing homes? They're decertifying, becoming assisted living. So what's going to happen if you have no money and no insurance? Where are you going to get the care? And I think with the problems with governmental health care, their biggest expenditure item is in for the Medicare and the Medicaid is where they're spending all the money. What's going to happen when you need the care and don't have the money? I mean, that's going to be a serious issue. So it is something you need to address with every single client. And you got to inform them of what the reality is. And it's an uncomfortable topic, and I'll admit it. It's probably the least productive area of sales, so I don't spend a ton of time on it. But if they're interested, we're going to explore the options.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's show. Remember, before moving forward with any of the ideas you hear on our show, always consult your tax advisor, legal counsel, or your broker-dealer compliance officer. Missed an episode? Just hop out to our site, downtobusiness.ashbrokerage.com. And remember, you could be wiser as an Ash Brokerage advisor. I'm Steve Savant. We'll see you tomorrow.